Just going to recap. LSU will be kind of some of the same things that we hit on after the game in the press conference. But sat there and I was kind of excited. They're actually really excited about our energy, about our fight, about our competitiveness throughout the game for 4 quarters. And I thought the kids did a real nice job with that. Coming off the Tennessee game, so that was something that we stressed during the week, that for 4 quarters, we were going to bow our back, we were going to bow our neck, and stand toe to toe and fight. And I thought we did that. I thought there were a lot of positives to take away from the game. Obviously, competing against the number 2 team in the country, and that excitement on Saturday and after the game, and got home and digested it a little bit, and then come in on Sunday morning, and I watched the staff watch the game film with the offensive staff, watch it with the defensive staff, and watch it with the special teams. And quite frankly, some of that excitement and positivity and juice, it was still there, but a little of that turned a little bit of, let's say, anger, but got me a little bit upset, because watching the film, there were a ton of missed opportunities throughout that game in all 3 phases that would have made it a much closer game. And I'm not saying it would have been a win, but there was, it's not coach speak, there were a bunch of plays that were left on the field that if obviously things can always be called a little bit better, but the ones that were there, we certainly had a chance. And and I guess it leads me to this point. Right now on offense and defense and special teams, it's not the ability to. Right now, it's the consistency to do it. You know what I mean? That we are showing in spurts on offense, on defense, and special teams. When we're locked in, we have energy, we're playing hard, and we're executing in a manner that's consistent with what we've been coached and how we practice. We're able to compete, as we showed on Saturday, with anybody in the country. Now it's a matter of, can we just do it over and over and over again on a consistent basis? And that's what we're fighting to get right now. And part of that comes from certainly a myriad of extenuating circumstances that we had entering the season, which really affected a lot of our depth at a bunch of different positions, our injuries, and quite frankly, our relative inexperience. And when you look at the percentage of guys that we have playing in prominent roles right now who are either true freshmen, redshirt freshmen, or true sophomores, it's a very, very high percentage. And ultimately, at the end of the day, as coaches, our job is to keep our head down, keep grinding, and keep working every day to get these kids better. From a performance indicator standpoint, we didn't win turnover margin. I think first time in 20-some-odd games that we haven't created a turnover, and we turned it over 3 times. Like I said, you can't give that offense and that team extra possessions, particularly with how they complemented with their defense. So didn't win a turnover margin. We did meet our explosive play margin offensively. 10 were passes and 1 was a run. So it was over the 16% that we looked for. But, giving up explosive plays also got us again, and that's been a kind of a consistent thing that we've talked about defensively. We've done a better job creating turnovers, but haven't done as good of a job limiting explosive plays, and then third down and red zone. So, that's kind of, the summary of the game and where it was. I thought it was a fantastic home crowd. Certainly appreciate the vocal support. Started from the dog walk when the buses pulled in and the tents were out and the people were cranked and the cowbells were ringing. Came through the entire first half and obviously waned a little bit towards the end. But, that's what makes our place one of the, if not the best, home environment in all of college football. When you go back and talk about complementary football and small things and margin of error and having young guys on the field, that we scored a touchdown and turned that thing into 15-7. All right, we kick off and we get a face mask. All right, which pushes it up, and then we have a miscommunication in coverage where they throw a touchdown. And that makes it. I'm sorry, that's at 9-7 at that point, and that makes it 15-7. And then we have the ball with 2 minutes left, and we try to go on a drive and score, and Garrett makes a misread and throws a pick, and then they turn that into 22-7. So those are the things against a team like that with a margin of error, keeping the fans in the game, keeping them excited, and just those small things that we weren't able to finish up there. From a recruiting standpoint, we had 85 kids on campus for the game, which was a very, very high number, including 9 of our commits. And the feedback from them after the game, back when I got home, texting all of them and their parents, was incredibly positive. Not just how we competed, but the direction of the program, where we're headed, and how the young guys are performing for us on a favorable basis. And then certainly very optimistic for this week against Texas A&M. For the remainder of the season, and definitely for down the road as it bodes for the future. Our student athletes of the week this week were Austin Williams and Dedrick Thomas. From an injury standpoint, on offense, Greg Allen with an upper body day-to-day. Stuart Reese with a lower body day-to-day, and Garrett, we continue to list him as day-to-day with a lower body, but he's grinding through it. Brian Cole with a lower body. We think he'll be fine day-to-day. Chauncey Rivers with a mild lower body day-to-day. We talked about Mo Smitherman being out for the rest of the year. And, Tyler Williams is still day-to-day with a lower body. Moving ahead to Texas A&M, kind of previewing those guys. Coach Fisher, 13-7 in his second year at A&M, 96-30 overall, fourth winningest active FBS head coach. Won a national championship in 13 and was a national coach of the year. And I think you guys have probably seen he's led them, against the toughest schedule in the country in 2019, including playing two teams that were ranked number 1 at the time in Clemson and Alabama. Coach Fisher calls the plays, well-balanced spread attack with some pro-style elements in it. And just our top players, obviously, Kellen Mond, the quarterback, Isaiah Spiller, the freshman running back, and Jamon Osmond, the receiver. They've done a real nice job there offensively. When they're averaging right around 30 points a game. Mike Elko's the safeties coach and the coordinator. Base out of 4 down, mix it up with two high and 1 high zones, do a good job with pressure. Justin Matabikwe on the D-line, number 52, has done a real nice job. Buddy Johnson at linebacker, and then Miles Jones at safety. And they have been in Coach Elko's, once again, you run the gauntlet in this league is another guy that's considered kind of one of the tops in the country at his position as defensive coordinator. And they split the special teams duties amongst the staff. Brandon Mann is the punter and the kickoff guy. Has done a real nice job. Aeneas Smith is the return guy. And then Seth Small is the kicker, 11 of 15, and then 10 of 11 on field goals inside the 40. So the challenge for our kids this week, I thought they bounced back really nicely after the game. There was a little bit of that bounce that you want to see after a loss, the upset, but not hanging their heads, getting their chin up off their chest, and making the corrections at practice. And then moving forward to Texas A&M. And they've been challenged this week when we talked about not just the ability to, but the us to be able to do it in a consistent manner. The consistency of habits and approach will lead to consistency of performance and results. So what can we do from Sunday until the ball kicks off on Saturday with every single little thing in this program as we talk about culture, going to class, sitting in the front row, treating people with respect, drills that start behind the line, drills that finish through the line, you finish through the line, jogging in between drills, all those things that differentiate good teams from great teams and allow you to be successful. We do those things during the week. Our habits will lead to our results. So that's been a challenge. But team is excited, coaching staff's excited. A chance to go on the road in a place I've never been and, work to get our second SEC win and get this thing rolling in the right direction. Okay. Any questions?
Questions? We'll start with Paul and Robbie.
Coach, you touched a little bit about on defense with obviously Mo out and Tyler has been banged up the last few weeks. What's kind of been your impressions of guys like Martin and Jerry stepping in there and some other young guys like Nathan Pickering that have got more reps? How have you seen them progress through those added reps that they've gotten?
I think when we recruited those guys, kind of in the same way as you look at Garrett, that they don't lack confidence and were, I don't know how realistic it was entering the season, but both of those guys had a plan and in their mind that they were going to get on the field. And I pulled them in, sometime last week and say, listen, you're not freshmen anymore. You guys got to play grown up and, be ready to roll and, to be able to start a true freshman corner against those receivers in that offense and have Jarion come in and play a significant number of snaps. And I think Martin had 1 PI and they may have had a couple balls caught on him, but you wouldn't have said, hey, there's two true freshmen on the field. So I think those guys are representative and indicative of the young guys in this program, Nathan Pickering, Garrett Schrader, Colin Duncan, and some of the guys that are redshirt. And so, a lot of young talent on the field early. So, like I said, bodes well for the immediate. Certainly bodes well for the future as well.
Hey, Joe, how do you assess the offensive line play the last few weeks, particularly maybe in the run game? Do you feel like they're up to your standards, or what are you kind of seeing on film?
Yeah, I don't think we were particularly physical in the run game against Tennessee and didn't protect very well. Gave up 7 sacks. I thought we came back. And against this front, I thought we protected very well, only gave up 2 sacks. I'm not sure that 18 had any. And kind of what they do schematically, I'm not sure it wasn't for a lack of effort, a lack of physicality. But LSU's pretty dang good up front. They have them 3 big space eaters in the middle, those guys that hold their gaps. The linebackers run. They fit the safeties and run support. So I thought we were improved from Tennessee, but not necessarily where we need to be from a run game perspective. And, I thought, that's something that to get the run game, backheaded where we want it to be. That we've got to, once again, play with that same kind of effort, but create a little more push up front in the run game.
Coach, you got a guy like Colin Hill, and you tried to get him a little more involved and had him out in the pass pattern a little more. But when he's having some games that are maybe not up to his expectations, how do you kind of keep him on the path?
Yeah, I thought that was one thing that was a positive from Tennessee to LSU was Colin's response. And we talk to our kids all the time about two things you have to be good at: response to prosperity and response to adversity. Because in football and in life, things aren't always going to go the way you want to. And it's easy to be excited. It's easy to be energized. It's easy to be in the front of the line when things are going well. But tough times don't test character, they reveal it. And I thought Colin did a much better job, staying positive, staying with his teammates when things don't go his way. And, listen, I want as much as anybody for him to be able to come out and rush for 150 or 200 yards a game, and kind of early in the season I think may have set that expectation. But when you're playing against the defenses in this league, in the line of scrimmage football league, there are going to be games where he don't hit 150 or he don't hit 100 or, maybe he hits 50. And the thing that I'm most excited about right now is we're averaging more pass yards than we are rushing yards. We want to continue to get the rush yards up, but in the past, prior to last year, when that would happen, you'd fall back and you'd lean on the pass game. And you would protect and you would get open and you would throw the ball. And because of some of our results in the pass game last year, I don't want to say it changed my mindset, but I've got to get back to the mentality where if that's not working and they're taking away the run game, either by their personnel or our inability to get it going, we're protecting well right now. We're getting open. You see a bunch of, I think Osiris and Stephen Guidry are both a couple catches away from surpassing everything from last year and from a yard standpoint. Dedrick producing, Isaiah coming back strong, Farad having a nice thing, Garrett throwing the ball accurately. And that's where when we get to where we want to get to, and I understand it's a process offensively, this is an incredibly long answer to a short question, so bear with me. I promise it's going somewhere, okay? When the run games gets slowed or shut down, and that happens sometime in this league, just that's you go back to the Clemson. You got to be able to throw the ball. And right now, I'm feeling much more comfortable. If that's getting shut down, we're going to work to get it going. But you also got to be able to pass the ball with confidence and efficiency and effectiveness. And I think we're growing towards that.
Joe, Garrett's got a couple games in by now. Would you say that he has a firm grasp of the playbook, or does he still have a little bit left to learn there?
He has a lot. He has a ton left to learn, miles and miles and miles, and that's a good thing because he's a true freshman. And you talk about not just the what's, but the hows and the whys. And every experience for him, it's like, what they say, tabula rasa. It's like blank slate. You know what I mean? He comes in and he's learning a new thing over and over again. And the first time he does it, maybe the first time he sees it. And some of those things were happening throughout the course of the game. But I think the good thing is he can beat with his arms. He can beat with his legs. He makes some plays by design, some by improvisation. But every single snap that he takes in practice and during the course of the game is going to make him better and better and better for the next game, for the rest of the season and down the road. So, yeah, I think he knows the majority of the playbook. There's some things we're going to continue to develop with him. But there's also some things as a true freshman, just like the kid at Auburn, just like, probably the kid at Tennessee that, it's all a learning experience for him.
Joe, you guys were obviously able to generate a lot more pass rush this week, and it got some more of it at Tennessee too. What have you seen from your guys' scheme, and just was it someone just bringing some linebackers, or what have you kind of seen from those guys?
Yeah, I think Chauncey's done a real nice job. I think you see him probably being our most effective pass rusher right now. Marquise is doing a good job, Kobe, Fletcher a little bit, but I think, we aren't doing a ton generating a true pass rush with just a four-man rush. I think what we're doing a good job of is creating some pressures to create one-on-one matchups, and those guys are winning those. So, it hasn't been fantastic by just a four-man rush standpoint, but I think we've been able to, generate a pass rush through pressures by creating some one-on-one matchups with the scheme.
Kind of in that vein, I mean, you got I know Cam made a play on the corner blitz at one point, and Leo Lewis had a couple plays in the backfield too. It looked like, how much of that do you see just aiding things and getting a little more push?
Yeah, same thing. When you're pressuring and blitzing and bringing it from different numbers and different angles and different levels. Yeah, Cam got one and Kobe got one, or Leo got one on kind of an add-on. When he's covering the back and he blocked, and then he adds on to the pressure. So, yeah, I think once again, I think pressure has been our best way to generate pass rush this year.
Still looking for your first true road win this season. Next two games are on the road. How big are these next two games, especially given your current record and what's on tap after that with Alabama coming here?
Yeah, I think it's big because it's the next one, and as we've talked about before with this team and who we are and the construct of it with us fighting and scratching and clawing, that we got to have singleness of purpose and just concentrating what's on 5 feet in front of our face. So, we've talked a little bit with the leadership council and the captains and kind of some of the coaching staff and making sure. And there's not many different ways to do it, but just making sure our Friday routine with an early kickoff is something that we're working well, in terms of meetings and walkthroughs and things like that with the kids, just trying to tweak that to make sure, because it's been done a certain way for a long amount of time doesn't make it right. So we're just trying to tweak that and making sure that's correct. But, I think it's important because it's the next one.
Coach, with 5 regular season games left, obviously you guys got to get 3 more wins to get bowl eligible. How much of a sense of urgency do you kind of feel from the players and the mood from their practice?
No, I think practices have been good. I think they've been energized, but that's something where I think with our approach, I don't want them thinking about a bowl game. I don't want them thinking about 6 wins. I want them thinking about the next win. And if we keep, like I said, focusing on the process and the consistency of our habits and approach, those things will hopefully take care of themselves. So. I don't think there's urgency to say, hey, we got to get 4, 5, 6, 7 down the line. We got to get number 4, and that's what we're most focused on.
Coach, early when Garrett had to start against Kentucky, sometimes he had a tendency to hold on to the ball just a little bit. But in recent weeks, he's been kind of tucking it and going. What have you kind of seen from him from a poise standpoint, being able to make something positive out of a play when there's not a lot there?
Yeah, I think certain guys have an innate ability that the clock in their head, kind of, I'll say, slows down, that you drop back to pass, you make your reads, you go through your progressions, and when you've exhausted your number of progressions, I've always told quarterbacks 2 things. It's run or throw it away. So as he's climbing the ladder in that pocket and he's gone through his reads and he feels that thing kind of, collapsing around him, you either got to throw that thing, throw it away or take off. And, with him, I'd recommend take off because he does a good job with his feet. So I think he's been, as you noted, much more poised as he's gained repetitions.
Kind of sticking on Garrett, you mentioned a little bit after the game, and now he made kind of looked a little bit like a freshman a little bit in that game. And when you look at the film, how did he maybe grade out, and how did you kind of assess his performance? I know it's obviously an athletic defense.
He graded out well. I mean, it was a 17 of 28, over 200 yards passing, 1 touchdown. Some turnovers. I think he was our leading rusher as well and scored a rushing touchdown. But I don't want to say it was a performance indicative of a true freshman, but when you look at in that position, in that environment against that team and against that defense, it was the mistakes he made and the interceptions he threw were pretty simple things to solve. You know what I mean? And you chalk it up to experience, and he's going to be better moving forward from it.
Coach, Jacarius Landrieu has had a good senior year and has been real consistent as far as tackles, and he occasionally makes a big play. Last year he had a really good game against Texas A&M. Just talk about his progress and what you've seen out of him lately.
As a full-time starter for the first year, I think he's really matured. I think he's a guy that is not necessarily a vocal leader, but leads by example, and kind of is a real steady player. May not make some of the flash plays that McLaurin and Abram made, but he's kind of always in the right place at the right time and understands his strengths, his limitations, and he's been a very, very solid performer for us this season in his first year as a starter.
You mentioned tweaking some of your routines for 11 a.m. games and maybe games on the road. What are some of the things that you guys have to do differently to try to do better on the road? Because there have been some games where you guys come out and don't look like the team that showed up at Davis Wade the other day.
I think we have to start fast. I think that's probably the biggest thing, that we can't come out there and, not be excited, not be energized, not be executing for a quarter and a half, and next thing you know, you look up and you're down a touchdown or 2, and probably go back to the Kansas State game, 2 years ago, where that was 11 a.m. kick on the road, and I think we got started fast there and kind of carried some of that momentum on. But I'd say that'd be the biggest thing, starting fast.
You mentioned Landrieu and how he wasn't exactly, a vocal leader so much and things. When you're dealing with a young team with a true freshman quarterback and so many young guys playing big roles and stuff, is that something that leadership, that vocal leadership, when you consider what you lost from last year and those big personalities and things, is that something that's still kind of in the process of developing too inside the locker room?
Yeah, I think it's a twofold thing. I think there are some people I believe that they're born leaders, and that's something that's within them, and they're capable of doing it. And I think there's something from a program standpoint where you want to develop leaders, and I think that outside of the kids voting for who the captains were, the leadership council as well. So every Sunday after practice, I meet with the captains in the leadership council, and it's comprised of the captains obviously, and then 2 guys from each class. So that once again, you're trying to identify who the leaders are, but foster some of those skills in the guys who are a little bit younger. So when they get into the seat, that they're a senior or a junior or an upperclassman, they have some experience in that role.
Obviously, there's a huge difference between the Patriot League and the SEC.
Yeah.
But in year 2 at Fordham, you really took off and had one of your best seasons there.
Yeah.
Just from your program's perspective, what's the biggest difference between year 2 there and year 2 here?
Yeah, I took over a team that was 1-10, and hadn't had a winning season, I don't think, since 2007. And then I think we went 6-5 the first year, then 12-2 the second year. I think we may have beat Temple that year. We got up there 4 or 5 in the country. I think probably, the Patriot League's an excellent, FCS academic football league, and we played up and beat an FBS team that year. But I think it's, quite frankly, who we're playing, you know what I mean? And it's the toughest division and toughest conference in all of college football. So I don't want to say the learning curve is different. In the construct of the team you take over is a little bit different. So I think those are probably the biggest things that, it's relative that you're playing FCS versus FCS, but certainly when you're talking about, FBS and Power 5 and the SEC, I think that's a whole different deal.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
Appreciate everyone. You guys have a great day. Hail State, stay dry.